Just 15 miles north of Apple's headquarters is the city of East Palo Alto, which in 1992 was America's murder capital. The city had experienced 42 murders that year with a population of less than 25,000 people. Needless to say, the whole city was concerned, but one citizen in particular by the name of John Lahr, who happened to be a PhD seismologist, approached the Menlo Park Police Department with a radical idea of how to combat the murder rate and bring it down. His idea was to use seismological techniques for detecting earthquakes and apply those to tracking down the exact locations of gunshots. So once he got the green light from the police department, he quickly set up base in his home, and he wired the city with 5 microphones which were usually used for earthquake detection. He tweaked them a little bit, he upped the samplings rate, and he used a technique called acoustic triangulation, which basically means that when a gunshot takes place, each microphone listens to how long it takes to record the sound, and when you compare the distance, you can actually pinpoint the exact location of the gunshot. Cell phones actually use the exact same concept with cell phone towers, and if you watch a lot of murder mystery shows, a lot of cases are actually solved by pinpointing the location of a phone call using triangulation techniques as well. And he got the experiment underway, and the results were astounding. He was able to demonstrate to the police department that he was able to pinpoint individual gun incidents down to something like less than 15 yards, which was considered a huge success. So much so, in fact, that a startup company called ShotSpotter picked up the technique and further developed the technology. Now, fast forward to the 2000s, and the city of Washington, D.C. was a contender for the murder capital of the country. In 2005, the FBI granted the city of Washington, D.C. $2 million to test out ShotSpotter's technology, which claims a gunshot detection rate of 90% accuracy within 60 seconds of an incident. 20 square miles of Washington, D.C. were covered with approximately 300 microphones, and in 2016, quite some time after initially launching, ShotSpotter reported that they've detected over 69,000 gunfire incidents to the local authorities, leading to multiple arrests and an overall decrease in gun violence in Washington, D.C. Since then, dozens of cities across the U.S. have adopted the same technology and are applying it currently with an equal success rate. Unfortunately, in the past 10 or so years, we've seen this drastic uptick in domestic terrorism and mass shootings in the United States. So it's only natural that interest has been expressed in applying this technology to indoor use. Savannah's College of Art and Design have expressed interest in testing out ShotSpotter's technology on their campus, which is a great initiative. But the problem here is that the system would cost around $50,000 per school. Now, this is great for colleges and institutions that could afford to stomach the bill, but even so, the bigger problem is that it's still geographically confined to a very limited area, meaning that we can't apply this to every single city, town, and village in the United States. It's too costly to wire the whole country with an array of microphones. But when I think about it, every person is already carrying a microphone or two with them at all times in the form of a smartphone, and more interestingly, smartwatches. So what if in the same way that your Apple Watch is constantly listening for the phrase "Hey Siri," it also listened for the acoustic profiles of AR-15 muzzle blasts and other popular firearms? In June of 2019, Apple announced an Apple Watch app called Noise, which is actively listening for the ambient sound of your environment. Every time your environmental noise exceeds a level of 90 decibels, it shoots you a notification letting you know that repeated long-term exposure to this audio level could damage your hearing permanently. So Apple's demonstrated that their watches can listen in a way that doesn't record conversations or invade your privacy. And at the same time, they can listen for smart key phrases or specific audio profiles. So my thought is, what if Apple could create an app that converts every Apple Watch into a crowdsourced network of microphones scattered across the country that can detect gunfire in real time? So imagine the following scenario. A mass shooting takes place at a crowded city center. Once a sufficient number of Apple Watches have heard and identified the sound of gunshots, they could tag it and report it to authorities with a GPS location, just like ShotSpotter. But where things get interesting here is that the Apple Watch enables two-way communication with authorities and victims involved in the incident in real time. So for example, people could flag themselves as needing medical attention, maybe even tap into the watch's biometric sensors and share their vital signs with medics in real time. People could also report other people as victims and the degrees of their injuries along with location. At that point, authorities could send citywide warning to all iOS devices and Apple Watches that there's an ongoing incident, much like an Amber Alert, instructing people to run to safety, which buildings to avoid, which streets to hide in, and etc. Now, authorities could also gather information like crowd movement via the watch's sensors. And maybe there is a companion app for the iPhone that allows victims to share a live stream, giving authorities eyes and ears inside of the building or the city center in which the action is taking place. And finally, people that have survived could mark themselves as safe to automatically alert family members and their loved ones that they've been unharmed. Now, there's tons of challenges with this approach, the number one being ShotSpotter's intellectual property. I'm sure the company has trained maybe thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours into their algorithms to fine-tune the detection of gunshots. Apple would either have to acquire the company or retrain their own machine learning models from scratch, which could be costly and timely. The second potential pitfall here I see is false positives, meaning tons of sounds sound like gunshots in a crowded city or could be misinterpreted as such. So the challenge would be, how do you weed out things like fireworks or car crashes or any similar sounds? Of course, locations like gun ranges would have to be whitelisted because there's people constantly shooting. So the challenges are probably endless, but I'm an optimist in the sense that I believe that technology with enough passion could overcome these problems. Anyways, let me know what you think, and until next time.